Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the Hughes OH-6A Cayuse. It's a 1/32 scale kit from Revell, model H-4101. Now this vintage kit was first released in the early 70s, but it's still available at online auctions for reasonable prices. It's also been reboxed for both military and civilian liveries many times over the years. Now, at first, the Hughes OH-6 went into service in '66 as a light observation helicopter for the Vietnam War. Now, it's still in service today in many places for many roles. And this model kit was introduced in the early 70s, but it's been reboxed, like I said, up through '98. This is the '81 release of the kit. Now there are just a few parts in it. It's a fairly basic kit with about 40 pieces, and we'll be using mostly liquid cement and sometimes super glue for strength and white glue for the clear parts. Here are the decals for this kit. They're very colorful and include the shark's teeth there. But the register is good and the colors are great, but I suggest you use some setting solutions for these. And sometimes these old models, you may want to give them a light mist coat or two of clear lacquer and then cut them out close to the decal so they don't come apart in water. Construction starts with the cockpit, and we're going to sand the ejection pin marks and part numbers off part number 4 there. And be careful when removing them so that you don't damage the alignment tabs on it. Now remove and sand the flash and the sprue tabs clean, and then kind of clear out the alignment holes. Now we can put the parts together in this fashion. You can see the whole subassembly here and how it's placed. It's a little vague in the instructions, but just take a good look at this and you'll see how those parts go together. Now put them all together, and part number 4 should tip back when attached to numbers 1 and 2. So you should tip that forward to touch the top of part 4 when it's placed into the tabs of part 2. And once again, take a good look here and you'll see how it's aligned. Here is the pilot figure that comes in the kit, and well, quite frankly, it just looks so bad I decided not to use it at all. You might want to go to a different kit, a newer one maybe, for this particular figure. So find these cockpit pieces and accessories out of the kit, and then we're going to once again remove any of the attachment points, pins, and sand off any flash that you see there. Now we're going to add these parts to the cockpit, and you can fill the sink mark in part number 4 here, and there's an oversized alignment tab hole there with some glazing putty or modeling putty. Just let it dry and sand it off. And now paint the cockpit and the interior of the fuselage using the reference photos from the internet that may be available, or any information you may have. There's no call outs in the kit, so use what you can find available, and go ahead and replicate that through the different paints. And so I also painted the instrument panel prior to assembly, and I used a medium gray for the majority of the interior, with flat black seat centers, the inserts there, control grips, and the pedal pads. White belts and the tan canvas color for the rear compartment accessory items. Then I dry brushed the buckles with some silver to bring out the highlight. There's no decal for the instrument panel, so I just dry brushed some of the gauges and switches with a little silver for highlight. So grab all of the glass pieces out of the kit and the fuselage halves, and the dimples you see here in this one are not imperfections. Those are simulated air vents. So we're going to clean those up, trim them off of the trees very carefully, and then dip those in some of the Pledge floor care polish or whatever it's called. Wick it off and let those dry. And then we're going to start working with some white glue, and we're going to add the windows to the fuselage halves. Now prior to that, of course, clean up the fuselage halves. Make sure all the edges are clear of any kind of flash, and we're going to then install the windows and let those set and dry. Now we'll go ahead and tape the windows off with some I use Tamiya tape here, and then trim off anything on the excess edges with a hobby knife, and some painter's tape for the center to cover up the glass completely. And then you can use, by the way, that white glue is especially made to dry pretty clear, and you can fill any gaps with that if you need to. Also, locate the landing skids, including the this smaller piece, and we're going to glue those on with some super glue for strength, and get those in position. I'll locate the rotors and the blades from the kit and the bracket there, and we're going to clean those up. Just use a sanding stick and clean any flash off the edges, and it's got a nice droop molded into it. So now set those aside to dry after you assemble them in this fashion. Next we'll work on the details for the tail area, and of course you have to clean them up with some sand sticks and a hobby knife. Then glue the parts to the fuselage, and be careful not to glue the tail rotor to the fuselage, just so that the pin is able to rotate. Get the parts out for the machine gun next, and remove any imperfections, clean her up, and then glue the gun mount halves together and let that dry, and sand the seam and attach it to the hole that you had previously made in the fuselage where it's indicated, and then assemble the gun barrel and paint the gun with some gunmetal dark gray. After a nice couple of coats of light gray primer had dried on the fuselage, now it's time to go ahead and paint it, and I used some Tamiya XF62 here, which is a nice olive drab flat, and then give it a couple of nice even coats to get a good overall consistency and hue. After the paint has thoroughly dried, you can remove the tape from the windows, and then paint the main and the tail rotor blades flat black and attach them to the model, and use some black there to accent the hub assembly and the exhaust area. Dry brush some silver too onto the skids, where it would look like there'd be some foot traffic and scratches might occur on the top surfaces. All that is left is to place some decals on your model, depending on the livery that you've chosen, and of course the model kit venue that was used. So they actually went on pretty well even without the addition of a gloss coat first, because these are repros that had to be remade with decal paper from the originals. Scan those in and just printed them out, and they go on pretty well like that. Well, you'll have a couple parts left. For one, I didn't use the pilot and this glass piece, which is generally used for civilian and observation use like highway patrols. Well, there you have it, and this kit takes us back to the Vietnam era, and extensive use that it saw there was probably pretty instrumental in that campaign. But it's also been used, like we said, for many other uses, including civilian uses nowadays. A very versatile chopper, and well, it's a easy kit to build. There's a little flash on it, but it goes together well, and if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this step-by-step premium scale model kit review. And so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the ROR icon in the lower right hand corner of any review. Or you can find us on Facebook and at our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.